Hello, welcome back. I'm Lynda Kinkade. Well, inflation in the U.S. is now at its lowest level in more than 3 years. The Consumer Price Index, a key indicator of the American economy, rose 2.9% last month, the first time it's been below 3% since March of 2021. That keeps the door open for a possible interest rate cut by the Federal Reserve when it meets next month. Well, the U.S. economy is the focus of both the Republican and the Democratic presidential campaigns this week. And in the coming hours, Donald Trump will be in North Carolina to give a speech on his economic plan. And then on Friday, in North Carolina, Vice President Kamala Harris will roll out her proposal for the economy. Her campaign is spotlighting the fresh numbers on inflation, saying the economy is strong and warning that Trump's agenda will drive it into a recession. And right now, Republican VP nominee J.D. Vance is in the critical swing state of Michigan, where he is expected to discuss economic issues. Well, let's break things down with CNN senior data reporter Harry Enten, who joins us from New York. Good to see you, Harry. So it's interesting that despite very little information or detail on Kamala Harris's economic policy, that a poll suggests that most Americans would trust her with the economy more than Trump.
This, to me, is one of the more interesting poll findings that we have had during this entire campaign. All right, so let's take a look. We're going to look at the national picture here. Trust more on economic issues. And I want you to note the trend line here because the trend line is so important. In July, what did we see in this University of Michigan poll? You saw 41% of Americans said they trusted Donald Trump more on economic issues than Joe Biden at 35% down here. Now let's jump ahead to this side of the screen and let's take a look at August. That Republican advantage that Donald Trump had, adios amigos, goodbye, see you later. Look here, Kamala Harris, 42% more trust on the economy, Donald Trump at 41%. Look, that's no clear leader, that's within the margin of error. But the bottom line is, at least according to this one particular poll, this advantage that Donald Trump has had on the economy nationally, his top issue, along with immigration, that advantage has gone, see you later.
Wow, just incredible. So how is it looking in the battleground states, in the Great Lakes right now?
Yeah, you know, if you know anything about American politics, it's the race to 270 electoral votes. A popular vote winner nationally means absolutely nothing. Just ask Al Gore or Hillary Clinton back in 2016. So let's take a look at these key Great Lake battleground states, the states that we've been talking about so often, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And I want you to take a look here. Trusted more on the economy. Now, you can see that Donald Trump still holds an advantage in August, but it's a 6-point lead, right? 52% to 46%. Look at where we were back in May. Again, it's the trend line that is so important here. Back in May, Donald Trump held a 14-point advantage on the economy over Joe Biden. And so what we're seeing both in the national numbers as well as in the swing states on the economy, in fact, on pretty much every single issue, where Donald Trump was prior to Kamala Harris getting into the race, when the likely Democratic nominee, the presumptive Democratic nominee, was going to be Joe Biden, Donald Trump is flailing. His advantages are receding. The issues in which Democrats lead are becoming wider, and you see it right here, because the fact is, if Donald Trump is up only 6 points on this issue that has been such a key issue for him, that is likely not going to be good enough if he wants to win, of course, in these pivotal battleground states, which probably will decide this election.
And November, of course, is rapidly approaching.
Yes.
So how much are these economic issues and policy going to impact this election down the stretch?
All right, so let's go back in. We're going to look at Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, but I'm going to zoom in on undecided voters because this election is so close, all right? So the top issue for your presidential vote among undecided voters, well, not much of a surprise. The economy, inflation is number one. Look at that. 21% who say that is their top issue in terms of determining their vote. And this is, again, among the undecided voter, that critical small block of voters. And look how much higher that is than abortion, which is the number 2 issue. That comes in at only 7%. So the economy, inflation, 3 times as important to voters as the number 2 issue. If you can tell me what the economic numbers are going to look like on Election Day, that is, who is going to be more trusted according to the voters, I can tell you who's going to win that election. Of course, I'm not Nostradamus, so I can't tell you how those numbers are going to look on Election Day, but I can tell you that's where we want to look.
We do love your prediction. Harry Enten, good to have you with us, crunching the numbers as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, the state of the U.S. economy is, as we were just discussing, top of mind for American voters. So the candidate that can deliver the clearest economic message could capture the White House. CNN Politics senior reporter Collinson joins us For more on that, and interesting, Stephen, you've just written an article on CNN.com saying that the candidate who can coin an effective economic message can win the election. Of course, we're going to hear more from both candidates later today and in the coming days on their economic policies. What will you be listening for?
I think when the Vice President speaks on Friday, it's going to be very interesting to see how her message differs from that of President Joe Biden. She, after all, has been in the administration for 4 years. She is complicit, as the Republicans would say, in all of the decisions that took place on the economy. I think there's a few clues in what she's been saying. She seems to be talking more about high prices, which have been haunting Americans, especially in the grocery stores, ever since the pandemic, more so than the more longer-term factors that Biden has been very interested in. For example, boosting manufacturing, trying to transform the economies of those Midwestern states, which are important issues, but they tend to take a longer time to deliver. So that's the Vice President. As far as Trump's concerned, I think the thing we're looking for is to see whether he can stick to his script. He's been flailing ever since Harris came into the race, and a lot of conservatives and Republican strategists are very frustrated with him and want him to narrow down on that issue of the economy that Harry was saying is going to be decisive in November.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've got some sound from Nikki Haley, who certainly said, focus on the message. Forget about AI, forget about crowd sizes. I just want to play some of her sound.
And the one thing Republicans have to stop doing, quit whining about her. We knew it was going to be her, but the campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes, talking about what race Kamala Harris is. It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb. It's not, you can't win on those things. The American people are smart. Treat them like they're smart.
So if Trump does stick to the economic policies and message, there are still concerns about that. We saw just early this summer 16 Nobel Prize winning economists penning a letter saying that Trump's policies could potentially fuel inflation. And he's also warned about a potential great looming depression. How could those claims and his policies backfire?
In a close election, as this is probably going to be, anything can really change the tone of what is going to happen. It only takes 10 or 20,000 votes, say in Wisconsin, to shift that state from one side to the other. We've seen that in the last 2 elections. So if there is concern about Donald Trump's economic policies, I think that will have an impact. The one thing I would add to that, however, is that lots of Americans appear to be quite nostalgic for the pre-pandemic economic conditions of Trump's term. Prices in the grocery store were much lower, and that's what a lot of people remember. So I'm not sure that a lot of voters are going to start getting into the nitty-gritty of whether his policies would cause inflation because he's going to slap big tariffs on Chinese goods. A lot of people would perhaps like to see him getting tougher on China, so that may be the way they process that question. But as I said, this is going to be a very close election. Any one issue could be decisive.
And just quickly, months ago, we were talking about how little interest there was in the upcoming election when it was Trump v. Biden. That is very different now, according to a poll with Harris at the top of the ticket.
Yeah, there are actually several polls out today which show that Democrats are increasingly enthusiastic about this election. And that shows us how Harris has transformed this race since getting in 3 weeks ago. She's on a real surge right now. That's important because you have to get voters to the polls in a lot of these swing states where, as I said, a few thousand votes can make a difference. Under the Biden ticket, Democrats weren't very enthusiastic. Many of them thought they were going to lose, and there were real questions about whether Biden could, first of all, assemble the same Democratic coalition that he did in 2020 when he won the election, and whether a lot of those Democrats or softer voters or independents even would get out to vote for him. That's been transformed under Harris, and that is a very good trend for Democrats. The problem, though, however, is she probably has to win by 2 or 3 percentage points in the national vote to win in the U.S. electoral college system and become president. So although she's rising in the polls, there's a long way to go here for her.
Yeah, it certainly is. Quite a few months. We will chat again soon. Stephen Collinson, good to have you with us. Cheers. Thanks.